did this training. Oh yeah, I remember we did this.
Bread and butter, you should be very good at it. Every day is a training day when you're going out on that medic unit 10 times a day. Welcome to the Triple P Podcast, premier, professional, and proactive. Brought to you by the Ohio Fire Chiefs Association. I'm your host, Clayton O'Brien, and I'm the fire chief for the city of Oregon. I'm joined by my co-host, Captain Joel Fry from the city of Napoleon. Welcome to episode 20 of the Triple P Podcast. This is part 2 with Marc Hill, and we're starting to really get into diving into the conversation regarding Too Dark 30, his book that he wrote, and that's where I really want to lead this conversation off as part 2, and there's a whole bunch of different chapters that we're gonna talk about, but before we get into that, I really wanted to hear from Marc on his views on, first, how did you come up with the name Too Dark 30 for your book? And then also, how long did it take to write a book of, 230 some pages? These are questions that I think that our listeners would certainly be interested in, knowing like, hey, they're probably in a position where they've been told once in their life, you should write a book. And they think about that. And then they're like, well, I didn't really like writing essays in high school or in college or whatever else. So let's walk through that process a little bit of how long it may have taken it. And then, if you had any advice, if somebody was to want to write a book, what advice would you give to them? How do they get started? Where do they get started? And, then we'll dive in there and go chapter by chapter.
Yeah. It's funny. The name Too Dark 30 comes from, it's quasi-military, right? Because everything is called dark in the military after midnight. So Too Dark 30 meaning 2:30 in the morning, 2:30 a.m. So as a teacher, when I'm teaching courses and things like that, and I'm always, trying to relate to the young ones, the inexperienced ones, listen, I want you to be able to act at Too Dark 30. I want you to be able to do this at 2:30 in the morning when here in Wisconsin, bar time's 2 a.m. So everyone's leaving the bars and all the proverbial crap hits the fan at 2:30 in the morning. That's when you get into the multiple car accidents. There's an overturned school bus full of hemophiliac children and, the babies hanging out the window. I mean, that literally, that's the go time, right? That's the witching hour. That's the time when you got to be able to act, and know what you're doing and be able to help people at that time. So the title of the book came from that as my kind of go-to phrase when I was teaching. Hey, at Too Dark 30, where are you going to be at? At Too Dark 30, I want you to be able to do this. At Too Dark 30, and I look at you, I need to know that you're with me. And I need to know that you're going to help me, right? So that's where the title comes from. The subtitle, Inspiring Stories, for teaching and learning, and America's, in our heroes. Well, that all comes from my basis of teaching, right? Talking about storytelling, talking about inspirational things to really develop the teaching and the learning in emergency services. So getting back to that topic of storytelling and how it drastically can affect your education and your actual teaching abilities. Like I was saying before, it doesn't have to be your story. The things can come from everybody else. It doesn't have to just be something that you experienced. Let me tell you about something else that happened. Let me tell you about another incident that occurred. Let me tell you about this. And that will pull people into what you're talking about. The fact that, teaching in general is something that a lot of people, it's like public speaking, right? The number one, I think the last time I saw, the number one thing people hated or was scared about was speaking in public. Well, how do you get good at speaking in public? You got to do it.
You got to do it. You just got to do it.
You just got to get out there and do it. And it's like anything. Like if you don't get nervous before doing something, then there's probably something wrong with you. I remember, watching, some of the episodes on Disney Plus talking about Tom Brady talking about what, as he was a quarterback and yada, yada, yada. And he fully admitted in the show, I mean, this guy, like him or not, he is a fantastic quarterback and he's got the Super Bowl rings to prove it. He said straight up, if you didn't have butterflies before a game and get nervous before a game, there's something wrong with you. Yep. This is Tom Brady, of course it's like the word expert. I hate the word expert because nobody is an expert. It's impossible to know everything about a subject. I can tell you about what I know. I can tell you about, the experiences that I've had. If you think that I'm very knowledgeable about that subject, fantastic. But I will never call myself an expert because there's always something to learn. There's always something new to develop. There's always something that will make you grow as an individual, So when it got into writing the book, that was something that I really had to get over because I was like, well, like you said, Clayton, you should write a book. You should write a book, blah, 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 blah. And, everyone can write a book. If I can do it, literally everybody can do it. This is not, this isn't something that is special to, a select group. Literally everybody can write a book. And it, like you said, Clay, it doesn't have to be long. It does not have to be that long.
But when,
at all.
And if they were saying, hey, write a book, and honestly, I will say, because knowing your background, talking to you, I'm thinking, Mark wrote a book. Not only do you have a lot of knowledge in it, but it was maybe things that came from prior to your fire service career because of your, teaching and your, all that schooling that you had before. If that prepared you more to be able to write a book than just, Joe Blow, Clayton, write a book type of thing.
Yeah. And I'll be honest with you. So to go back just a little bit, the idea of writing a book came from the fact that because of my teaching background and because of the history I have in education, I was kind of always, I don't want to say pigeonholed or I was typecast, but whenever we got new people or whenever there was a new Proby class or whenever something was going on that needed quote unquote lecturing, education, or whatever to be discussed, talking on the television, I was always the media guy because Mark knows how to talk to people. He can, we'll throw Mark out there, so, so I did all that. I would do the interviews. I would do, the talks and, I would train all the people and, I was there, which is fine with me because like I said, I enjoy doing those things, and that doesn't bother me, like it could some people. So it came real natural to me. So because I was on our department here in Wausau, because we're a crew department, I could only be on one shift. So I couldn't, I was on B crew, which everyone knows is the best crew. So A and C crews, they had to deal with, I wasn't there. So I was fielding texts and calls and emails of, hey, when you did this, or hey, how did you do this? Or hey, when this happened, or what, when you went through the checkoff list with the new, so I was always fielding questions about, no, this is how we do this. And, this is, explain it like this. And this is the type of question I want you to ask. Don't just say yes or no questions or true, false kind of questions. I want them to explain to me, like what are the medications we keep in the refrigerator? Okay, great. Why do we keep them in the refrigerator? What do we keep the cold saline for? What is that for? It's not for heat related emergencies, right? So I want you to explain to me that those are what, in my book, I kind of talk about those higher order thinking skills and, stuff like that. Those are the types of questions you want to be asking people because it makes them think about all the processes dealing with that thing,
and that's
whatever it is.
That's the true reason of like a JPR that Joel kind of talked about a little bit. Yep. Is that the JPR is to trigger that start. So let's say we got a JPR and a 4-gas meter. Well, it's not that you just know where the 4-gas meter is located. It's that you not only know where it's located, you know how to turn it on, you know how to bump test it, you know how to calibrate it, you know all the 4-gas sensors and what they do and why they do it. You know the limitations, and you know that if it says this number on the LEL, then you know you got to do this. It's about being proficient in whatever that is. No different than what medication's in your refrigerator or and how much it's going to be or why we use it. It's about we started the conversation through a JPR page or through their rookie book or a probationary book. It starts that conversation for you to get get proficient at it, then be checked off on it. And I think that you use that as a good example, is that saying that it is. Now, when you were fielding the questions, were you fielding them from say other firefighters or other, because I remember from your class that we talked a lot about field training officers. So were you a field training officer in your department and then fielding questions from other field training officers, or how was that going?
Yeah. So basically when I was fire chief, I developed a whole training program that dealt with field training officers, having preceptors and things like that.
Okay.
When I left being fire chief and went to Wausau, we did not have that role. It's now in the contract that there's preceptors, but at the time there wasn't. So I was fielding questions from other firefighters you'd get voluntold, hey, you got the new guy. He's yours for the next month.
Okay.
So that was always the topic they were assigned the new person. They didn't really want that job. They did it. They didn't enjoy it. I knew, and I liked doing it. So they would always, come to me with questions, which is fine. So I would give them what I would do, or I would tell them this is what I did, or, things like that. And then they did those things and it worked out pretty well. And that's where the idea of writing the book came along, because I actually got hurt. I had a couple of back injuries a few years ago. So I was off duty and had time to myself. And I just started you know what? I'm just going to start writing these things down. So that was my mistake. If my intent was truly to write a book in the beginning, I should have done a better job literally making a list of all the topics and the ideas that I had, and then taking those topics and ideas and then because I'm a visual kind of person. So I like using Excel and, I like making charts and things like that. So, putting everything on a Post-it note and then, taking it and organizing things like that. So I should have done that. I didn't. I just started writing, basically whatever came off the top of my head. And I just started writing stuff down. So that made it a problem for me halfway through, because I had so much information and it was all literally trains of thought,
random thoughts here or there, nothing
not organized at all. It was just and then this, and then this, and then this, and then this, and then this. So I which was okay, because I did get a bunch of information down, but I didn't have it wasn't organized. So I had to stop halfway through, go back and be like, okay, what's the point here? What am I really talking about? I need to organize this thing, because I was talking about officer things. I had fire chief stories in there. I had all kinds of different stuff. I'm like, okay, this book cannot be an education / let me tell you about how I screwed up as an officer. There has to be a separation here. So I literally took all that officer stuff and put it aside, and then reorganized everything into, okay, this book is going to be about how to teach in the fire service, right? I want this book. What do I want? What is the purpose of this? What do I want people to get out of this book? I want it to be a resource. I want it to be a guide. I want it to be, in a conversational tone, like you and I were having a discussion. So it was very, my writing style, hopefully you've picked up on that when you're reading it, that it's not real jargony. It's not real, specific about, really, it's not, I don't want to, it's not a textbook. I don't want people to think
your writing style is kind of like how we're talking right now. I feel like when I'm reading the book, like you're in the room, like telling me is how guess how I'm taking it.
Yeah. And that's exactly what my point. Cause I've been through lots of schooling, and I've got a lot of paper certificates. Fantastic. You know what? Most of those things were so boring that, it was so hard to focus. And oh my gosh, what did I just read? I just spent 35 minutes reading this thing and I don't even know what I read. that's not what I didn't want it to be like that. I wanted it to have stories. I wanted it to be short, sweet, to the point, and I wanted it to be something that someone could come back to over and over and over again and pull something out of it. So that is where the organization came in. I wish I would have done that first.
Because then it kind of, in hindsight, hindsight's always, you know, but so then how long did it actually take? So as you were writing all these things down, then you realize, okay, now I gotta almost take a step back, reorganize my thoughts, how I want to, you know, put them into certain chapters. What's my main thing, that you're talking about? So how long did that whole process take for you to write the book?
From start, because when I started the book and then when I realized I was probably 30,000 words into it, where I was like, okay, this is too much.
That says a lot about you though, right there, Mark. I mean,
because of information
that, you know, that I think that says a lot about you, because, for you to then go back 30,000 words in and realize I got to start over. Like, you know, and it's kind of, I contribute that to the same feeling of, if you don't get nervous going in public speaking, then probably something's wrong with you. And what's wrong with you, I believe, is that probably nobody's wanting to hear what you have to say. I mean, because if you're not getting nervous to be up there, that means that you've never been humble enough to realize that how I deserve this stage. You know, like if you're telling yourself that, you know, you should, just all these things about, you know, just, and I lost my train of thought there for a second, but what I was trying to say is that, that if you don't get nervous going up in front of a group or have an audience, then I feel like that individual's not humble to be able to understand the true impact that they could have on these people, and their message might come out a little different.
Yeah. There's another phrase I always love to lose. Let me tell you how humble I am.
Yeah.
You know, I think we all know those people, right?
Yep.
It's just like, man, you know,
it's kind of like for you to be humble enough to read 3,000 or 30,000 words and say, oh my gosh, I got to start over. That is really something to be said, because you've put so much time into it. So then after that, then what? So now you're like, hey, I got to restart. I got to read. So
I know. So that was the thing. It's just like, crap.
You could have gave up, you know?
No. So, and that's the thing, you know, I think, you know, just the way we are in this service. So I'm like, okay, all right, let's start over. Let's organize this thing. Let's actually get some topics down. Let's actually go through and like, okay, these are important things I want to hit. Now I'm going to organize my list. What did I already talk about? Okay, great. Those fit into these chapters. You know, now what am I missing from these chapters? I need a story. I like stories, and you know, I want that to be a part of this book. So I'm like, okay, let me think about a story about this, or what happened with this instance, or you know, is there a story that I can recall that I can tell about, you know, whatever the situation is, you know, talking about creating scenario-based training, you know, and how important scenario-based training is, or, you know, let's talk about, you know, chapter 9, when I talk about, you know, hard, difficult conversations. You know, no one told me, and no one trained me how to tell someone that their mom or dad or a loved one died. Like that there's no training for that. Mm-hmm. That's never been in a class I've ever had. You know, that was something I learned and
told my people about that right away. I came back and told my people, like, oh my gosh, you know, like I thought that resonated with me from your class. Like, you know, when you go up and, hey, I am that mother in the other room, and you got to tell me that either the husband or grandfather, daughter, son, whatever, had just passed away in the other room. And so when you said that, I'm like, you know, nobody's ever taught me how to do it either. And I could imagine some people, especially the young ones that come in, you know, and they get nailed with a couple of these right off the bat, you know, it's just, that would be very, very tough.
It is. And no one, besides the fact that no one teaches us how to relay that conversation to somebody, no one teaches us how to deal with it now. Right. Yep. And that's the thing. Like, I know PTSD, and I know, you know, mental health, and, you know, they're very popular right now to talk about, and it's super important. But at the same time, we've been doing this stuff for decades, and I could tell you and start crying about different things. And you never truly get to the heart of dealing with some of that stuff, because we have to get to the next call, or we have to go do the next thing, or, okay, I'm done with the shift, I'm going to go home now. Right. We never really process it until we retire, or, we're hit with a situation that reminds us of whatever the event was, things like that. So, but no one, they never talk about that. So that's why in the book, I wanted to make sure that, number one, we talked about the death talk in that chapter, but then I also talked about ways of coping with those things, because again, no one told me how to cope with that stuff. No one taught me how to deal with those things. People, and I'm not a drinker. I don't, I never got used to the taste of beer. It was one of the, I'll drink a beer if I have to, but
you never got the acquired taste.
Yeah. Anything that has an acquired taste, in my opinion, it's like, well, then why would I, coffee, I'll be honest with you. I'm not a coffee guy. I've never been a coffee guy.
Wow.
With
your energy, no
coffee? No, I don't. I'd rather drink a 2 liter of Coke and chase it down with a pound bag of gummy bears, that's, or eat a double cheeseburger from Wendy's, or, that's my thing. Like, emotional eating was my support structure, which is not a good thing. But at the same time, I also wasn't getting into the alcoholism factors, or other substance abuse things those are negative coping strategies, right? Because I'm trying to forget, or I'm trying to deal, I'm trying to, but you have to understand that. You have to know that going in, that this is not, I shouldn't be doing this. This is not helping, So when I talked about that in that chapter, I wanted people to say, or I wanted them to see that, hey, try painting, go for hikes, if you're into music, play music, write a book. If you want to, journaling, getting your thoughts out on paper does help. All those there's all kinds of things that you could do in a positive manner to deal with all the crap that we have to deal with and that we see in a career. And I think that's half the problem with some of the recruitment and retention issues that we're having, because it's almost like when I was teaching in public school, there's always looking for special ed teachers. That's always the number one thing they're looking for. Well, why is that? Well, because the burnout rate for a special ed teacher is like 3.5 years. They've done studies on this. Well, why is that? Well, you get into all the different things and all the different responsibilities that they have to deal with, and then dealing with the student and the family that comes along with it, and then all the structure, and then all the 3.5 years. I'm done doing it. I'm out of here. And we're kind of seeing that now in this industry, where we're getting new people in and they're not staying, or they're transferring, right? We're getting lateral transfers from other departments, or we're getting people that are just like, you know what, this is not what I thought it was, and I'm going to go and do this. And because unemployment is so low, they can just leave. They just pick up and go. It's not like it was 30 years ago when you had 1,000 people apply for a job, and we're just riding the engine and we're just doing firework. Like I said, in our department, 95% of what we do is EMS. I mean, we're really paramedics, and we're part-time firefighters. I'll be honest with you. But at the same time, where should we spend our training then, right? What are we going to train on? Well, we have all of our refreshers that we have to do. We have all of our continuing education that we have to do. But am I going to spend so much time on something like I see, like IV starts? How many thousands of IVs that I've done? Am I going to waste my time, and I'm going to waste my crew's time going through the step-by-step process of how to start IV? No, because we do it every day, 1,000 times a day. Why would I'm not going to waste training time on that. I'm going to talk about stuff that could kill me. I'm going to talk about stuff that could kill somebody else.
I'm putting my
That's where you
hands
need
up
to-
because I just want to like, oh my gosh, it's everything about that I preach as well too. Like I get it. We do 80-90% of EMS calls in our department too. That's what we do on a regular basis. So therefore,
bread and butter. Yep.
bread and butter, you should be very good at it. Every day is a training day when you're going out on that medic unit 10 times a day. And I'll use what Gordon Graham always talked about, EMS calls was your low risk, high frequency. Low risk, get out there, do your job, be compassionate, read the protocol, study the things. We do it on a regular basis and you're going to learn on every call. Yep. But where, to your point, where our training should be is where it's going to be high risk, but low frequency. So we don't do it that often, but super high risk. It could kill me. It could kill one of my coworkers. It could kill somebody else. If I don't know how to do my job, then I can't get to that individual that's in trouble that expected me to be able to show up at 2:30 without having to think about it and be able to rescue that person no matter what it took. Deploy the line, get the water on the fire, which means all those other things in between is operate the pump correctly. First of all, get to the scene with knowing the address, all these different things that we can name about all the time. And I kind of preach in our department that we are a fire department first that happens to do EMS because we need the mindsets to be able to say that it's Oregon Fire and Rescue for a reason. Rescue came about in the fire-based EMS system because that's what kind of eventually was able to support fire departments because the need wasn't as much as we see as fire prevention has grown and fires have gone down. The need for actual fire-only departments has drastically decreased compared to what it used to be. So EMS comes along, which then does damage the volunteer service because now EMS brings in too many runs for those volunteer services, which then created that part-time and that snowball began to roll where you found yourself in a combination department or, an all-career department that does both. But to spend the time in the training needed to be really focused on the fire-related skills because they have such a dramatic effect for everybody. So thank you for bringing up that point, because I'm truly aligned with you there.
Yeah, and I talk about Gordon Graham in my book too. Because that's exactly that talk that he gives. Talking about what are the low frequency, high risk events. Yeah, that's where you should spend your time training. You've got discretionary time, and then you got your non-discretionary time.
Love it.
Where it's just like, listen, I can't. You don't have time to think. You need to act. Yep. Which I also mentioned in the book about OODA loop, and that Colonel Boyd, who was the guy who came up with that OODA loop strategy, that was a study done of fighter pilots that were dying in dogfights during the Korean War. Why were all these guys dying? Well, because they weren't orienting, they weren't reacting, and they weren't doing the things that they were observing quick enough to avoid enemy fire. They were taking too much time in their decision making, not reacting like they knew how to do. Mm-hmm. So that's where the whole OODA loop strategy comes in, and which is a whole nother teaching aspect, right? So it's just like, listen, we have to take all these different things and all these different concepts, and I tried to pare them down into that book to try to be like, okay, listen, in this service, these are the best ways that I have found to disseminate and teach information, right? Because it's one thing for someone to have knowledge. It's another thing for them to take that knowledge and now apply, adapt, and having a skill to then act in that 2:30 time. Because it's just like, listen, I don't have time to lecture and to tell you and to teach you how to do something at 2:30. I need you to be able to do it.
Yep. We're doing that at 2:30 in the afternoon.
Exactly,
we're doing that when we have downtime. Yes, we're not going to be in the recliner. We're going to be doing it during the, and to what I also, obviously, Gordon Graham think predictable is preventable. We know there's going to be a fire sometime. We know there's going to be an EMS call. We know there's going to be a motor vehicle accident. We know all these things. And we just have to make sure that we're utilizing our time within our 24-hour shifts to prepare us for that. It's predictable. Yeah. It's going to happen.
And that's the thing too. Like when you get into scenario training, that's why I'm a big proponent of coming up with scenarios. Mm-hmm. It's just like, listen, you can cover so many different things in one scenario, right? We can do a lifting assist. We can do a rescue. We can do a RIT situation, we can do an entry with hose lines. We can do a van ender search if you really. I mean, there's so many topics we could do all at the same time in the same scenario, right? We can hit all these different bases. Check, 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 check. All these different things in one scenario if it's well orchestrated, well organized, and has everyone on the same page. Does that mean that we all talk about what we're doing prior? Yeah, absolutely. We should talk. This is a training exercise.
Yep.
When I was coaching football, we practiced the plays that we would run, and we'd go against dummies, or we'd have, I would have the defense standing in the formation of the team that we were opposing, right? They're playing a 4-3, they're playing a 4-4, they're playing a 5-2, whatever they're going to be, we would practice against that situation. And then we'd run the play, and then we'd do it again, and then we'd do it again. And then, hey, what if they adjust to this? Now we're going to run it this way. When we do scenarios in the fire service, we should be doing the same thing. If we're going to do high rise, let's do high rise. But you know what? We can cover pumping at the same time. We can do standpipe operations at the same time. We can do a rope rescue situation at the same time. We can do, ICS at the same time. We can do rehab at the same time. We can, all these different things that we can do at the same time in the same scenario.
Yeah.
And we can have different groups of people doing those different things, and then we can rotate. And then we'll rotate again, and then we can rotate again, so that everyone gets a chance to see what we're doing. And then after the fact, let's talk about what happened. Let's have our own after action review. Let's do an actual talk about what went well, what went bad, what did we screw up, what do we need to focus more attention to, what are we lacking? Is there tools that didn't work, right? Because we're firefighters and we love breaking stuff, and no one knows how it got broke. So, I mean, what happened?
Yeah.
Those are all things that we can do in the same scenario, and that could be happening in the same 1 hour time frame. It doesn't have to take days, weeks, months.
It goes back to Joel's. It goes back to how Joel just talked about the 170 some slides on ladders in a lecture would take a couple hours. I mean, at least, and that would be kind of flying through them, if you will, because that's a little over a slide a minute. And so if that's the case, look how much you're able to capture with your hands on. So it's the exact same thing. Scenario based puts them in, you're putting all the different things together. And then actually where I feel as the student, is able to really kind of say, okay, I took this part. Now I know what the things, I know my shortcomings in that, but you know what? You may know that you missed the mark on there. Talk about it in the post action. Yeah. Talk about it in that thing, because then you're going to help 3 other people to not do that exact same thing. And that's the whole point. That's why I would always go first, be the first one to volunteer for a lot of things, so I can mess it all up. And then everybody can learn from it, because then, I didn't really know how to do it in the first place. But if I go first, then everybody's going to feel, oh, okay, it's not that bad, or he didn't really know. But it helps everybody learn for the next one. It's okay, and that's what. Yeah. That's really, I think, what is back to that humbling experience, and about everybody just trying to create an environment in our training atmospheres that say it's okay to make mistakes, and that's where we want you to make those mistakes, so you can learn to make them where they're no longer a mistake, because now you've done it so many times that you can't mess it up.
Yes, and that's where the heavy responsible, the heaviness of being an officer comes in, right? The weight of, listen, it's your ship. If you're the lieutenant or the captain of that house or engine or ladder company or whatever, if you are the person there, that's your responsibility. Mm-hmm. And if something goes wrong, you're the one that's going to be called to ask, what happened? Why did Mark act in that way? Why did he not know what was going on? Well, when was the last time you did training on that topic or that issue? Well, 6 months ago. Well, last year. Okay, great. Fantastic. You just got proven in a deposition that you're an incompetent leader. What else are you incompetent with now? So then it's just that's how lawyers are. Then they pick you apart.
Then you're done.
And I don't want to see anyone in that position. I don't. Whether you're in volunteer service or a career service, I don't want to ever see anyone have to be in a deposition and explaining your actions. Right? That is the worst thing in the world. It is not fun, But at the same time, if you take the training and the education seriously, and you develop those scenarios that we're all going to run through and we're all going to do, that's where the planning and that's where the curriculum comes in of, hey, we can spend the next 3 months developing scenarios. If we know we should have, hopefully you've got a training, plan and a timeline set up that, hey, in, August, we're going to do this scenario. In September, we're going to do this scenario. In January, we're going to do this scenario, because, hey, there's perfect times to do certain things, right? You shouldn't be doing ice rescue scenarios in the middle of January, right? That's something you should have done prior to January. I'm not going to do heat related emergencies, in August when that's something we should have hit back in February, right? I mean, so you should have planning and coordination done. Spend the time on the front end developing those things so that on the back end, when we actually do it, it's smoothly operated. We got everything, all the T's are crossed, all the I's are dotted. We have everything set up so we can actually go through. Now, does that mean that we shouldn't reevaluate what we did? Hell no. We're going to go back. We're going to talk about in that after action. We're going to go through, hey, what do we need? What do we need to change next time? What should we have done differently? This didn't work out because of that. Whatever the situation, write those things down. Everyone should have a discussion about what went well, what went wrong. Because when you do those scenarios, especially for the younger guys that haven't seen those situations, that's going to give them that contextual memory of, hey, when we did this training, oh, yeah, I remember we did this. Great. Because now you know how all the cogs in that clock are all working together.
That's right. Because our brains don't know whether we did it in training or if we did it in a real life incident. They just know that we did it. And so that's where it's a challenge to the veteran firefighters. The individuals that have been, on for 5+ years. You may not be as veteran as the 15-year plus. So, but the reason why that I say that's a challenge of them is because they need to share their knowledge. You guys have been around. You've seen a lot. And in order for that individual that you're so upset with that, that find themselves tracking back to the kitchen table as quick as they can because they don't know what they don't know. And that, they'll do anything that you ask them to do, but it's just the difference in generation and understanding the way that the individuals are. And our younger generation, they do lack a little bit on the motivation and initiative and things of that. Now, I've never had any issues of you ask one of them to do something. They will certainly do it and complete the task and do a very, very, very nice job at it. It's just about trying to get them, to get a little bit more motivated initiative. That's where we challenge our veteran firefighters that have that motivation, have that initiative. They've had that humbling experience where they felt like they were on the top of the world and your Dunning-Kruger effect until they had that one that just dropped them down and they just realized, oh my gosh, I don't know everything. And that's where that really we need those to start spreading that knowledge to those younger individuals, because if they see their veteran firefighters and their senior firefighters on their shifts being passionate about training and engaged and whatever else, that's going to help get them motivated and engaged in everything in the training too.
Absolutely. And, a lot of it, especially on the teaching side, a lot of it does come to motivation. You got to make it exciting. You got to make it interesting. You got to make it fun. You got to make it worth their while.
Yeah,
you do. And does that mean that you have to play game show host? A little bit. Yeah, it does. I'll be honest with you. Yeah, it does. Because the worst thing in the world is listening to someone drone on in a monotone voice, right? That is just like, oh my God, I don't even know what he's talking about. Or, all those different things. It's like, you got to make it fun. You got to make it interesting. You got to make it exciting. Okay. So how can I do that? Right. How do I get everyone talking? How do we communicate? The number one reason why, some of the generational differences we have, we all blame the past generation for problems. I mean, but that's what every generation does that, right? I'm a Generation Xer, so I see the people before me, the baby boomers. Well, you grew up with lead and you were licking paint chips and you didn't do this and whatever, your hippie generation. I mean, all this different stuff. You're the reason why everything's screwed up because of all this. Because that's in my generation, that's what we saw. But what does everyone love complaining about now? Millennials, because they're now the next generation. But millennials will complain about Generation Xers. Well, you're the ones that every generation does that.
And I think every one of them do. And I think it's just an excuse. I think it's just, again, what it boils down to is, what are you doing to make the fire service better today than it was yesterday? So how are you improving? Yeah. How are you improving it? Improving upon yourself, taking and sharing your knowledge to improve somebody else. But far too many times we have to just make sure that we're not working harder on our second jobs or on our jobs outside than what we are on our primary job in the fire service. Because, in the fire service, a lot of people have two jobs. Don't be working harder in your second job so then you can come and, hit the recliner on the primary job that gives you the opportunity to work that second job because of the way that our schedules are built. So use that time to invest into the younger person, use that time to invest in yourself, and continue upon that. So, but I'm going to segue us right into some of the things that I think that I would really want you to touch on before we get off. And this has been awesome, Mark, by the way. I mean, I can't believe we've been talking for an hour and a half already.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
So, no, very easy. So I really appreciate it. You've made it very easy. So, I think we've covered a lot of the different chapters in your book, but I just want to jump to a couple different ones that I'd like to get your take so the listeners could hear
the lightning round. Go for it.
Yeah, the lightning round. So, one of the ones at biggest is why creating a team is important. It would be chapter 6 of your book, why creating a team is important.
Well, for me, the reason why I had that whole chapter dealing with this goes back to my time as a teacher, but also as a coach. Having been a head coach of multiple, like I said, boys and girls, different sports, that concept and that camaraderie that you get out of team activities is also what lends directly to the fire service. And that's where we get that family, that brotherhood, sisterhood, where we're all part of the same group, right? Some of us spend more time, with people we work with than some of our own family members, right? That's where, the phrase, it's the second family comes in, because, literally I trust you to save me, and you are trusting me to save you. Mm-hmm. So developing that trust and that respect can only be done, in my view, in that team atmosphere, right? It's not an individual thing. It's, three musketeers, all for one for all. Because in our service, I'm not going to freelance, right? Freelancing gets you killed. So everything I do, dealing with the scenario training, dealing with, any kind of educational opportunity that I am going to make sure that everyone is involved and part of a team, and they understand that I trust you to get your part done. I can't do part C until part A and B is done before it gets to me. And I'm not going to micromanage you to do that. I'm waiting at the front of that house with flames, I'm ready to make entry. I'm not going to tell the engineer how to run his pump. I'm not going to go down there and catch that hydrant, right? Certain things have to happen before that water gets to me at the nozzle and we make entry through that door, right? That is the team concept. We can't do this job safely and effectively unless everyone trusts and knows that everyone is doing their job and doing it well, to the fact that I don't have to worry about what's going on over there, because I have to worry about what's going on in front of me. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Anytime and that goes back to that scenario training too. Anytime I can put people into a team and force them to see how those wheels and cogs all relate together, right? That is where that concept comes from. And a lot of it does come from athletics. you could be the best quarterback, best running back in the world, but if you don't have a line blocking for you, it ain't gonna happen. You don't have a receiver to throw to, it ain't gonna happen. You don't have that running back that I played defensive end. I could do everything in the world, but you know what? I'm not going to be everywhere on that field by myself. I can't do it. I need to trust everybody else, right? And that's where a lot of that, camaraderie and goofing around, because I talk about it in the book. That's where cooking together. That's why we do the things that we do. That's why it's important that we hang out and we talk and we discuss, and why every solution in the world can be solved at the Firehouse kitchen table. It's because that atmosphere has to happen. And if that atmosphere is not there, then you're not going to have the trust. You're not going to have the camaraderie. I'm not going to have, the relationships that we need to be successful and safe in this industry. So that has to happen.
Yeah.
And being a part of that team is hugely important to that.
I agree. And I think that, to your point of being able to have the camaraderie and cooking together and eating together, talking around the table, those times there are critical in being able to create the team, getting to know each other. The other parts that I think is super, super important of creating the team is that, is on the fire training ground. Because now we're hot, sweaty, you're doing your thing, and you're seeing your partner, coworker, in a vulnerable state just as well as they're seeing you in a vulnerable state. And as that happens and you get all done and everybody's high-fiving happy and, whatever else, and that we're able to build upon what it is, then you start getting this, persona about your shift. Like, we are the best shift, and then we are engaged and we want to be the best shift. That's why we hold ourselves here, because that's what we all worked very, very hard together, but we're doing it together. And so, not every fire department has that though. Some fire departments, I know, and it's just so sad.
It's hard
right?
to believe. And that's the thing. Like, it goes back to, all the leadership books, right? There's hundreds of leadership books. There's hundreds of teaching books. And it's just like, man, why is it so prevalent in so many different departments that leadership is lacking in certain aspects, and why training is always seen like, oh God, we got to train, oh geez, no, it should be, yes.
It's fun. Have fun out there and do your thing, because, that's what we signed up to do. I mean, we want to get our gear on. We want to go and do those things. But, it's leadership, to the point of like, there's been so many books out there, and then there's been so much talk about it. I kind of wonder sometimes if leadership, at least in the fire service, has become more self-promoting of, and where firefighters see that they're not dumb. They see it like, oh, well, you're just blow smoke. What's that?
Yeah. Don't be blowing smoke.
Yeah. Don't be blowing smoke. And that's where I think is like, if it becomes more self-promoting rather than just, where at least chiefs and other individuals, leaders in their departments, need to invest in their people and know and hear and listen to their people, because that, I think, is, really goes back to what you had talked about here is, why creating a team is so important. Well, creating a team is so important for all the reasons you just give, but it's just as important for the firefighters as it is just as important for the fire chief and whoever the leader is of that department. So get out there, spend the time with your people, sit at the kitchen table, have some conversations. And I know it's hard sometimes to find that time, but you gotta make it. And I will go back to
get out from behind the desk.
That's right. Get out there. And one of the things that when talked about lateral transfers and firefighters leaving a different department, I did ask a firefighter one time of hey, why did you choose to leave that department to come to this other department? And it says, well, because the chief ate lunch with us. It doesn't happen all the time, but he says, you eat lunch with us. You sit at the table. It's like, that's the thing, is like, I think that far too many times that we can get consumed in the office. And I'm just as guilty of that. Like there's weeks where I am just buried, where you're trying to get out and do those things. And you want to go spend the time and be able to be at the kitchen table and be able to have those conversations. 'Cause really that's the time that they might have with their leader or their individual to say the things that they want to say and feel like, not everything has to go prim and proper all the time. So, So yeah, I wanted to touch base on the team thing and why it's so important, because I truly believe it is in our fire service, because we love we got to love one another. We got to want the best for one another. We can't be, silo pillars that all I want to do is self-promote and be my own person. So I can be held on this pedestal during whatever time that they may feel, but I want you to be more successful, because I can assist you in that way. Like I find rewarding aspects of the service when you're able to learn something new, or that whatever you believe in your successes that is trying to get there, and you're getting there, that we are just as happy for each other,
Absolutely. And that's the thing. Like every teacher, sees that of their students, I want you to be successful.
Yeah.
I want to do everything I can to make sure that you are a knowledgeable, you have all your KSAs down, right? Your knowledge, skills, and ability. Yep. I want to make sure that you are better firefighter, paramedic, hazmat technician, rope rescue, whatever, whatever discipline you want to say. I want to make sure that you're better than me.
Yes.
I'm going to give you, like I said, I'm going to give you every tool that I have in my toolbox. I'm going to dump it into your toolbox. That maybe has a bunch of other tools, but here's everything I got,
But we're making the fire service.
That is everything I have.
Yeah, and we're making the fire service better today than it was yesterday. We're preparing for tomorrow's incidences, that sort of thing. So, all right, another one before we wrap up here. So, and I'll hit you with the number 9, chapter number 9. The toughest conversations can be the most critical. Talk about it.
Well, that goes back to when I was talking about the death talk, right? Where we don't have that training. I mean, literally, and I said this at the conference. One of the things I do when I'm the preceptor and I have a new probationary firefighter with me is, okay, we sit in the back of the ambulance. I'm like, okay, we just ran a code. She was, we'll say that this lady was, 76 years old. She's the mother of 3. Her current daughter is 24 years old or whatever. We worked her for an hour, right? We went through the whole gambit. Didn't end well. She died. I'm now the daughter. Tell me that my mom is dead. And that's the thing, like the new people, and especially the younger ones that don't have life experience, that have dealt with death, they will sit there and give me the blank stare and be like, I'm like, yeah, it sucks. It does. It's horrible, but let's rip that Band-Aid off and let's, this is how you need to do this. So then we'll role play. I'll be the person. You're now the daughter. Hate to tell you, blah, 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 we'll go through the whole gambit. Right. And in the book, I talk about there's the grieving process, which is, an acronym for different steps that you can go through as to hitting different levels of identify who the person was. Listen, your mother, all these different things. Don't be vague, be like, don't be like, well, they've passed. And, listen, I can't make in today's day and age, we can't make religious assumptions. Now, I'm not saying that they're into heaven now and, they're with the angels. It's just like, well, they may be not religious, or they may, I don't need to start a fight with somebody.
Yep.
Just be direct and say, listen, this is what we did. We responded. This is what happened. This was the situation that we were given. You're not a medical examiner, so don't say how they died, because we know eventually it's from cardiac, right? Their heart stopped beating for us, and we tried restarting it, but we don't know exactly what exactly happened. So don't say, well, they died because of this. So short, sweet, and to the point, but you need to be understanding with how you relay that information. So those conversations, those types of things, horrible things. And again, no one taught me how to do that. Nobody did. Never had a class about that. That's just experience after having, unfortunately, have had to do it hundreds of times of, hey, this is the situation. I'm sorry to tell you, such and such, blah, 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 blah. We did the best job we could, but unfortunately, it didn't end the way we wanted it to do. Right.
Yeah. And
I don't,
for you, I mean, it's easy for you to talk to people, I mean, so remember you're the person in your department that was doing the interviews and talking to everybody. So like for you, it's easy to talk to people. There might be somebody out there that in your department, those young individuals that don't have experience in the public speaking world or don't have experience of telling any sort of thing. So to think about a topic like that, to even go over to role play, just awesome.
And that, those are the types of, like in that chapter. So those are the types of conversations we need to have with our people. And that goes for everybody. That doesn't have to be just the new people.
Yeah, true.
I mean, that goes for everybody. Right. Just because, like when I was chief, I had a guy that was 72 years old on the department. Does it mean that he's real good at it? Does it mean that maybe he knows a way to break the news that I haven't heard of yet or haven't seen, or, hey, he has maybe more experience with having lost loved ones himself or friends or colleagues and things like that. And he's like, you know what? You just need to say it like this.
Yeah, quite honestly, because being at that age, I mean, it might be his friends, as all his siblings and everybody around him's passing away around him. And he's heard the message delivered to him numerous different times, but says, hey, this is the best way to actually, say it.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Or, hey, this is the way I wish someone would have said it.
True. Yeah.
After all the times I've heard it being told, this is the best way. This is how I want someone to tell me. And that's the other thing too. Like, some people, and it goes back to knowing your audience and, that chapter of who our students are, some people love being direct. They love just, you need to be direct with me. Don't beat around the bush. Some people you need to beat around the bush.
Yeah. Yep.
Some people you need to do it with, with kid gloves.
Yep.
Some people you can take that baseball bat and say, "What are you doing?" But then other people you have to be like, "Hey man, I realize what's going on here. I really like what you're doing, but you have to know, right? You have to. But part of that is gauging who you're talking to. And like I said before, I'm not going to give this kind of a talk to a kindergartner. That's inappropriate, mm-hmm. right? Someone that is a direct relative or I'm going to tell them. But if there's a young kid in the room or whatever that could possibly hear me, I'm going to pull that person aside. I'm going to take them separately. Mm-hmm. I don't want the kid to be hearing what I'm going to tell mom. Mom can handle spreading the news, or dad or whoever, right? So having that knowledge of who's even in the room is another big thing, right? Because that's stuff we don't really think about. Like, oh, I suppose, or having the police. Like when we, most of our, stuff that happens, we always have a, LEO on scene. So they do a lot of others because they actually, body, all those different things, technically a crime scene,
mm-hmm.
Until they release. So there's other stuff that has to happen, and they're very good at being a supportive, like, hey, I relay the news. This is bad. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to have to tell you because I'm sorry. I couldn't imagine, this sucks. It does. It sucks for everybody. Even if you're 85 years old, it still sucks. So having that other person with you to support you and then say, listen, this is officer such and such. He's going to be taking over. If you have any other questions, either contact me or and that's the thing. Like you should always have business cards or stuff to give to the family. Listen, if you have any other questions or if you need anything else, here's our card. You can call the station, blah, 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 blah. This was the crew, that kind of a thing. Those are all nice gestures. Now, here's the thing. And we have to realize this when we're dealing with this kind of grieving situation is those people may not hear half what you say. Because once you tell them that whoever had died, they stop listening. Like, because they're now in shock and they're in unbelief, they're processing something completely different. So all this other stuff that you just relayed after the fact, it had fallen on what they call deaf ears, mm-hmm. right? Because they stopped listening after you said your mother has passed or your mother has died. So we have to understand that too.
Well, Mark, how about, and maybe it's just been your intent for nail biter the entire time, but or maybe I missed it. I'm not sure. So closing remarks. So we'll wrap this up here. So closing remarks.
Yep.
But one thing that one question that I asked and is that what is that time frame? How long did it take you to write your book?
It took me, well, so like I said, it was over 2 separate back injuries.
So like over, like, would that be like
It was over the course of a couple years.
Okay. So then people wanted, because I'm trying to just wrap it up for like the individual, like if they said, hey, write a book. And then now I'm like to that point, we're like, okay, I'm going to write a book. So then it took me, plan on maybe 2 years or whatever it's going to be. And I get it. It's going to vary for lots of different people.
And it did. It like I did a lot of that writing when I literally was laid up.
Yep.
Like I wasn't supposed to move. I had blew a couple of my my discs, so I literally was just sitting on a couch, and I'm like, okay, well, I can type. So that was different, right? The 2-year process, I honestly, writing the book probably only took me a few months.
Okay. And it was just
like literally of committed writing.
Okay.
The other time was spent, it took me just a month to go over the organization and like the first kind of edits, like making sure I'm saying what I want to say. And I want to have it written this way, and making sure that my story makes sense, or, stuff like that. Then it was finding another editor, because we know what we want to say. We know, my intent is this.
Yeah.
But doesn't mean that is how it comes across. So then I'm getting my wife to read it, and then she gives me feedback. And then I'm getting my father-in-law to read it, and he's giving me feedback. And then I've got my dad to read it, and he's giving me feedback. So then I'm making those edits. Then I'm talking to another friend of mine that is also a teacher that's going through their doctorate at the same time. So I'm like, hey, you're smart, dude. I want you to read this. So they read it, and then they gave their edits. And then I found an outside editor that their job is literally editing books. So got her to read it. She did an edit, and then she sent it back. So then it's rewriting.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
And it's going through those edits. And that probably took 6 months, because at that point I have it written, but now I'm waiting for someone else to read it, and then they have to make their suggestions.
Yep.
And then I get it back, right? But I didn't want to edit it all, as piecemeal. So I waited until all the edits came back. Then I combined all those edits into then another finalized copy. Then I read it again, and then I had my wife read it again. Whether she liked it or not, she read my book. So, and then at that point, I was like, okay, this is pretty much as polished. Like I said, nothing's perfect. And when I reread it when I did my audiobook version of it, which is always funny. You don't realize how many, ta and these, pa and things like that when you're speaking on a microphone. So listening or reading it and then listening back and having to edit yourself. So that's a fun process. But I found errors even after all that edit, and it's just like, so then I went back and I, changed a little bit, but
so then what about,
it took years. It did.
Yeah. So then what about and then it was all the printing and all that stuff from there, after that. Yep. And okay.
Yep. That part was, if you want to call it, the easiest part, because once you get your final manuscript done,
yep, and
then you have your book cover done, and you're happy with the way they look, at least happy enough. Because like I said, nothing's perfect.
Yeah.
And, there's always, personally, I like the cover. I think I like it. My wife really likes it.
Yeah, I like it.
She's like, no, it blends the chalkboard kind of stuff, and the writing kind of looks like, it's written on a chalkboard, and, yada yada. So it stands out. I like it. It's simple. It's not too busy, things like that. And it was one of the things like, do you want to have a picture on the cover? Do you not want to have it? So that part was a little more fun because then it's a little more creative. But at the same time, that part was then the easiest, because at that point your manuscript is done and you're like, okay, this is it. Now, what color do you want the inside to be, and how big do you want the print? And, do you want it to be, 5x8, or do you want it to be bigger, or, so, but it is what it is at that point. It's whatever you want. But that part was the easiest.
Okay.
Getting to that point, though, was
the hard part. Was the hard part. Well, I really, really appreciate you sharing all that, about your book, but also all the knowledge that you brought to the podcast. And, I think the listeners, just like myself, will just appreciate all the things that you were able to share with us. And hopefully we can take back and apply some of those things at our departments, maybe water our own grass a little bit more. And, with the information that you gave us. So, really appreciate your time, Mark. And, thanks for being on the Triple P podcast.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed my time, and if you ever need me, reach out. I am more than happy to share my entire toolbox with anyone that wants it.
And for just to piggyback on that, so I want to say that for anybody that does want to reach out to Mark, he's always been super receptive, to me and responsive to me on LinkedIn. And honestly, I was connected with Mark before I actually was able to meet him at the Ohio Fire Chiefs Association conference. So if you are and want to connect with Mark or see about what he's doing, what he's posting, he's always got new information that he's putting out there on the LinkedIn profile. So connect with him on there, and hopefully that, you take away something from it. So thanks again for listening. Thanks again, Mark. Really appreciate it. And we'll be in touch.
Thank you for tuning in to the Triple P Podcast, premier, professional, and proactive, brought to you by the Ohio Fire Chiefs Association. If you'd like to hear more, follow us on Spotify, Apple, Google, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you feel so inclined, please help us spread the word by telling your fire and EMS friends about this channel.